Welcome to Automotive Innovators Unplugged, spotlighting the innovators, disruptors, and forward thinkers shaping the future of automotive retail.
Each week, we'll dive into the tools, tech, and strategies that help dealers win in today's market and get a little personal with our guests.
Introducing our host, Sean Kelley, #1 Amazon bestselling author, Special Operations Combat Veteran, and CEO of Car Motivators, known in automotive as the CarViz Coach.
And JP Burkemper, automotive AI expert and co-founder of vinsyt, helping dealerships retain customers with state-of-the-art artificial intelligence.
Now it's time for the show. Welcome to Automotive Innovators Unplugged. I'm Sean Kelley, CEO of Car Motivators, known around the industry as the CarViz Coach. I've had the privilege of coaching thousands of managers and leaders across the country, helping dealerships transform their culture, elevate their people, and drive real results. This show is all about spotlighting the true innovators, disruptors, and forward thinkers who are shaping the future of the automotive world. Each week, we're going to dive into the tech tools, technology, strategies that help dealers win in today's market and help you stay on the cutting edge of the latest and greatest technology, processes, and systems that help dealers succeed. I'd like to introduce my co-host here, JP.
Thank you, Sean. I'm JP Burkemper. I'm co-founder of vinsyt, your dealership's automated customer retention and loyalty program.
And today we have a very special guest. He's a man that is very near and dear to my heart, Paul Sansone Jr. Paul Sansone Jr. owns and operates the Sansone Jr. Automotive Group in the Northeast, up in New Jersey. And Paul works with his family, his wife, and them work together on marketing. His sons run his tech company and his dealership. And he's just an all-around phenomenal leader and probably one of the most automotive industry's best kept secrets as it relates to innovators. So I'm really excited to get into this conversation today with Paul. I'll start off with a question for you, Paul Sansone Jr.
Thank you, Sean, for that wonderful introduction. I mean, I hope I live up to the billing that you just gave me. Thank you. It was very nice.
Welcome, Paul.
Very nice to be here on the inaugural podcast.
So, Paul, what does innovation mean to you personally? And how has that mindset shaped the way you operate in the automotive industry?
I have always been one of the first adapters to whatever the new technologies are or the new processes are that are coming out. Really, since I've been in the automobile business 40 years, I remember I was the first guy to do an e-pencil with it instead of a Sharpie that you did stuff out of the computer and dust the deal through the computer. So in some ways, I've always been comfortable with modernizing our sales processes, trying things. Failing, not all the widgets work, but I've always just been very comfortable knowing, because there's no way everything stays the same. As much as this business really is the same as it was 40 years ago, it's amazing how much is the same. It is also amazing how much of the minutia and the day-to-day activities are different.
You've always been ahead of industry trends. What was the first major innovation you introduced that made you realize you could truly own your market?
There's been a few, actually. Originally, and this is 20 some odd years ago, I remember walking around my father's showroom. I mean, I'm second generation. There's a third generation in the business with me now. But I remember running my father's company 20 some odd years ago, and we had several showrooms on one property. And I realized that, we had, 2 female salespeople here, 1 female salesperson there, 2 in this showroom. And that was very unusual, 25 years ago or so. So I always believed in network selling. And I believe people want to work with people they feel comfortable with. And really the first thing I think was out of the box was women selling cars to women. And I had a whole separate marketing campaign, websites, everything else instead of trying to teach guys how to sell cars to women, and what is more natural than if you have female sales reps just negotiating with women. And it actually was very successful. Other things that have popped out, easy referral network. along the same lines. What business, doesn't thrive on referrals? What's the most basic thing in the car business? Everyone wants to deal with someone they know, someone they like, referrals. I believe that's where the price, the friction of negotiating becomes less intense because you're dealing with somebody. So that's still active today, easy referral network. And then with tier 4 marketing, I got a lot. I mean, tier 4 marketing is a company that we created to help salesmen build their business. A salesman's a business within a business. And what business doesn't have their own website? What business doesn't have their own social media platform? Quite honestly, that was well before the time. I mean, I started that over 10 years ago, and it's now actually more relevant today, tier 4 marketing, than it was, 10 years ago, because you have so many salespeople that are active in their own marketing, and with Meta and other cheap forms of advertising, it really is more relevant today than it was. And then obviously, most recently, Dealer-Controlled Leasing and Dealer-Controlled Solutions, which is my lending platform, which is actually our 5-year anniversary is today. We just finished 5 years. That has been the big win. While these other products are still active and relevant, Dealer-Controlled Solution has been the most financially viable and scalable at this point.
I do want to circle back to dealer-controlled leasing and dealer-controlled solutions. We're definitely going to talk more about that. And for any automotive leaders who are listening, you're going to want to hear about that if you're not aware of what DCS is. But you mentioned something about family. You started working for your father way back in the day. I know, JP, you wanted to get into some of the family discussions with Paul.
Yeah. Before that, I was just wondering, you brought up, of course, your second generation. Sounds like you just have that entrepreneurial spirit, Paul, just that mind for it. So what was it? Of course, being second generation in the automobile business, but was there a moment when you realized that automotive was your calling?
Never thought of anything else. I can't remember a time that I did not think I wanted to be in the car business. And so it was never. A lot of friends where I live went to Wall Street and all that other stuff. And I just never thought of a time where I was not going to be in the car business. I was very proud of my father's success of a business that he built. Being second generation or third generation isn't easy. A lot of people think, there's an entitlement train to it. Certainly, if you knew my father, that was never the case. You may be given the opportunity, but you certainly, earned your stripes once the opportunity was given. So in that regard, it was a very disciplined, but I was always a self-motivator. I always wanted to be the guy, always wanted to, put my father at retirement. I mean, quite honestly, it's probably the biggest bone of contention that we had is, at one point I was like, look, one of us is going to go to work and one of us is going to play golf. Which one? It's your choice. Very, very kiddingly, but the truth is, I always wanted to be the guy, and probably, but it was his business. And so we ended up separating. That was all fine. But the fact of the matter is I never thought of anything else. And this is a funny story about the third generation. I remember my two kids, Michael and Paul is called PS3 because I'm junior and it gets confusing. Everyone wants junior, but they think he's the younger version, but in this case, it's the older version. So anyway, we called my son PS3, and I remember my two boys being in the back seat of a car. They're 8 years old. And one of them says, well, Dad, how do you make money? Do you build the cars? I mean, they knew we were in the car business. They've been around the dealership. And I said, no, we don't build them. We buy them from Ford, and then we get the cars and we sell them to customers. And I remember Paul saying, so you buy it for like $4 and you sell it for $8? And I'm like, exactly. I wish it was that easy, but you got the concept. I would be willing to say my son PS3's answer would be exactly as mine is. I never thought of anything else.
Nice. Well, it definitely sounds like it started from your dad, and it seems like you're kind of passing on the baton. We know you've built multiple successful companies, know you to be a hell of a businessman, but from my view, you're perhaps even more of a family man, and a man who mixes his family with business. So as a guy who's built our company, my company, vinsyt, from scratch, right alongside my dad, can you talk to me about working with your kids your nephews, nieces, your wife, the strengths, maybe some of the challenges as well. I mean, what's Thanksgiving like at the Sansone household?
No doubt that business is talked about more than you would like because it is what we do every day. I'm not necessarily in a bad way, but again, my father and I split up, so there was some messiness there for a while. As I said, all's good now. Everyone's happy with how everything turned out, so everything's fine. But I did have some concerns about my kids, and my wife had some concerns about, if my kids would have some of the same experiences I had. And I told my wife, I mean, remember the words exactly. So the only problem we're going to have is if they don't work and they suck. I said, they're workers and they're bright guys. So I don't think we're going to have an issue with either one of those things. If they take it for granted, that's the only thing that I really thought would be an issue. But I am blessed that I have a third generation and I have two sons, a nephew, and my wife does work in the marketing, but she's the brand of the dealership. But I am blessed that I really have a third generation that comes to work and doesn't take anything for granted. I have had through time the pleasure of seeing very highs, lows. So I never get too high when things are great. I don't get too full of myself, and I never get so down on myself when things are more difficult. My kids, unfortunately, the last 10 years have been pretty much going up. Then boom, this is the first time we've had some challenges. So they have not experienced the difficulty. We had some explosive years the last few years. You didn't have to be a great car dealer to make a lot of money a few years ago, but now you do. And so that's one of the things that only time will give you, that wisdom. Only time will give you that comfort of knowing, as I said, you're not as bright as you think you are when things are great, and you're not as stupid as you feel sometimes when things are tough. So my thing is work works. Just put your head down, get back to the basics. And that's really where we're at now. But there's no doubt, unless you've ridden that highs and lows, you get a little rattled sometimes on the lows.
Yeah. Family involved or not, we're definitely dealing with that.
Well, that's where it gets to the Thanksgiving dinner conversation is about, I really try to keep little problems. Most of the time they really are little problems that you can work your way through. So I don't, like I said, but that does dominate conversation when we're together. Obviously we have marriages, kids coming around. So obviously my wife keeps the social calendar pretty filled. So we are not so singularly focused that we don't enjoy the family aspects of life, because we do. I have a wonderful family that loves hanging out together. I mean, so it's nice.
Yeah. Paul's good at setting boundaries too. I'll give you props for that. I remember it was probably one of our third or fourth dinners together, Paul Jr. We were going to one of your favorite joints on the Jersey Shore. You were done with work at this point. It was like 7:30. You're like mentally done with work for the day. And I brought up work and you're like, Sean, I don't want to talk about work anymore. And I was like, and you're like, I don't want to talk about work anymore. I was like, yes, sir. Let's talk about something else. You're great at setting those boundaries, but I know that that's easier with, a friend than it is kids, right? Because kids, they can, overstep a little bit sometimes, and which is interesting.
I certainly gave with my father at times, and I'm sure my kids test me at times, but it all comes from love. And like I said, everybody's intentions all come from the right spot. There's never I never feel like there's an ulterior motive with anybody. I really drama free is my life. I avoid drama like the plague. And my kids, like I said, any issues that we get are just differences of opinion, and I give them more latitude than I think I was given. But I think that's part of how things were run 30 years ago is different than how things are run now.
Interesting what you said about focus on what you focus. And I remember PS3 is going to kill me if he listens to this, for the record, but I'm going back in time. We're talking 8-9 years ago. PS3, super young, and I remember one of our first coaching convos, we jump in the call. I was like, what do you want to focus on today? And he rattles off a list of 20 problems. And I'm like, and it was stuff about the market, stuff that 80% of it was stuff he has no control over. And I'm like, cool, how much of those things do you have control over? And he's like, just 2 or 3 of them. And I was like, okay, so what good is it to stress and worry about stuff we can't control? And he was like, none. And I remember that was like for him, like it was one of those moments. And it was crazy because I remember that combo because it was one of the first ones I had with your son. And then you fast forward like 2 years, you and I are in Vegas for some conference. I think we're speaking at Digital Dealer or something. And I'll never forget what you said to me. We were riding the tram back home from, a dinner party. It was kind of late. And I was like, Paul, what's your best tip for me for success? And you looked at me and said, focus on what you can control. Don't worry about anything else. And I'm like, man, that's so powerful. And then I remembered that convo that I had with PS3, and it was just like,
quite frankly, that's why I get frustrated with Sean and I talk through some family dynamics, because once it's out of my mind and whatever decision was made, it's gone. But if I took 5 seconds to make a decision, boom, that's over with. Now to the next. I don't even enjoy having multiple conversations about the same thing. I just want to let's get to the next one. Let's get to the next one. Let's get to the next one. Where that communication style is a little bit different with my kids than they are with me. My kids, I think, are very, very good communicators. I'm not that I'm not, but like I said, I'm more direct. I want to get to the point. Get to the point. Next, sometimes miss a beat here or there, but
you're right. As a business owner, especially running a business of your scale, multiple businesses of your scale, including nonprofits and things, it's like you have this never-ending line of issues to tackle and address, and you can't let a few of them take up red space in your head and take up bandwidth. You have to address them and move on. And
it's like a wheel. As soon as if your problem becomes the top of the wheel, you're going to get dealt with. When you get bigger, every now and then you could skate by in that little thing, but you'll always get in the bullseye somewhere along the line. Your time will come if you don't perform. And obviously, things like incompetence or theft or things, the thing will jump you to the top of the pack. But that's the problem with multiple businesses. You have to make decisions on little snippets. Walk through a showroom, you see one thing, you have to draw a conclusion. See one deal being structured a certain way, you draw conclusions. That's one of the negatives. And I think I do, if I draw a conclusion in error because of its short information, most of the time I'll say I think I'm right. But if you do draw a conclusion, I think I'm at least willing to listen to, and that's where my kids are better at coming back at me later and saying, boom, here's the whole story, or here's what you didn't see. And that's fine. But that is a challenge with running multiple businesses, is that you're making decisions on short pieces of information. But that's why the heart always means, if I have somebody that cares, and this is absolutely a true story. This morning, of course, I hate when I say that. But anyway, I walk in. We did not have a good month last month. And really, I'm ready to we're having our doc meeting this morning, and I'm ready to
crack skull.
I walk in 7:30, 7:45. There's people there, ready to work, cleaning up CITs, doing whatever. And man, how can I be pissed? I mean, I really couldn't. I mean, because I know the heart is there and I know they care. And some of that is, hey, it's the market. Some of that is always you could do better. But to me, that is what is my guiding principle, is if I feel that you care and that you're willing to work, I'm generally willing to give a little bit of grace if there's grace needed.
JP, do you want to ask anything else around family, or should we get into his DCL?
Let's get into the innovations.
Okay. All right. So Paul, we want to hear the story behind DCL. So what inspired Dealer-Controlled Leasing's creation, and what gap in the industry, or at least for your dealership, were you aiming to solve?
I think everybody's got a forte in this business. Some guys it's parts and service. Some guy it's discipline, operational controls. My forte has always been on the sales floor, and specifically working with customers with less than perfect credit. To me, that was always the market. When my father, we had 20 some odd dealerships at one point, and I was the company fireman. I'd go into a store, hire, fire, retrain, do whatever. First thing I did at every dealership was start the credit line. And back then it was with the phone, they had in the paper, the phone line. That was the first thing I did at every dealership. And I always had the ability, Somebody wanted the new Maxima. They drove out with the used Ultima and they thought I was the best thing since sliced bread. It was all because of customer handling. Not that I was able to negotiate with the banks better, but it was all the customer experience, the customer handling. So that was always my forte. And my father and I split up in 2008. 2008 is when it started. 2009, I started my new business. And if anybody, JP's probably too young to remember what it was like in 2009 in the car business. But it was not an easy time in the car business. It was desperate times in the car business, to be honest with you. Banks were shutting down. Chrysler went out. Everybody was going out. I mean, it was desperate times in the car business. And I had everything on the line. Like I said, I split up with my father, and I had a dealership that we just started, and the banks were shut down. So I went to my credit resources, which were drying up. And the fact is, I ran into a woman on my showroom floor that said, I just can't keep paying Enterprise $1,200 a month to rent a Corolla. And I'm like, well, why are you paying $1,200 a month to rent a Corolla? I got her tale of woe. And just before that, I learned about the opportunity that you could actually repair somebody's credit. And credit repair back then was a dirty word. It was sort of perceived as a way to beat the system. We call it credit education now, but it is a different process today. But I didn't realize that if Sean Kelley had marginal credit, that he could work with a credit repair company, improve his credit, and come back to me with better credit, and I can get him a car loan. The problem is Sean Kelley needed a car today. That's why he was at my dealership. So I created a rent-to-own model from that one woman saying that comment. I said, well, how about if I rent you a Sentra for half the price? You work with these group of people, help them improve your credit. I'll give you some money back as a down payment. Boom, 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 boom. Hence, rent-to-own. I actually own the phone number 866 rent-to-own nationally because I did several hundred of those deals, and it was we couldn't report to the credit bureaus. Insurance was in my renter's company name. So there were reasons why it didn't scale, but it worked. Customers built down payment and they built their credit score through working with the credit company. So that the process worked, and it was a great process. Fast forward, the banks loosened up everything else, but that was still in the back of my mind of how do I scale this? I mean, really scale it.
I think a lot of our listeners are probably thinking, well, what's the difference between that and CAC? And I'll just go back in, 08, 09. I was running a used car operation in South St. Louis, very subprime. And I remember several lenders just went out of business. They just literally went under. And then our normal, tier 2 cap 1 calls all of a sudden became like turn downs or tier 9s. And thank God we had credit. We had just launched credit acceptance 6 months or a year before that. And that really helped us. But, it's like we're selling these high mileage cars, they have issues a lot of times. It's hard to service them. And then the customer's stuck in that car, for a long time. So, I mean, the CAC's been around a long time. What's different about?
I was a CAC dealer, so I see the value of having that as an outlet, but I thought it was a more customer-friendly experience, giving people the opportunity to improve their credit, get better rates and terms, and work with a shorter-term lending cycle. As you said, you deliver somebody in CAC or other subprime banks, you're not seeing them again for a very long time, and the outcomes are sometimes not what the customer even wants for the reasons that you mentioned. Your customer with marginal credit really has 3 choices. No, you can't get approved. Buy here, pay here. And I don't knock that industry because they serve a purpose, or a high interest rate long-term loan. I wanted to come up with something that offered more. So rent to own transitioned into lease here, pay here. Now, everybody knows what buy here, pay here is, but lease here, pay here, what was attractive to me with it is I took my old concept, help customers build down payment and help them build their credit score. Said, how do I do that in lease here, pay here? First off, in a lease, the insurance is in the consumer's name. So that took the insurance edge out of it. In a lease, we can report to the credit bureaus. So if you enter into one of our programs and you're making your payments in a timely fashion, it's getting reported to your credit bureaus. And then finally, doing a short-term lease, we could actually structure the lease so you build equity quickly, as opposed to building down payment. We help you build equity, which is really the same thing. And so our process does that Our average lease is 36 months, really 38 months, but 36 months, and our average customer turns their lease in 24 months. So think about that. And we've done, as I said, this is 5 years, 1,500 plus deals. In 3 years, I could look you in the eye and say, JP, here's the car, here's the terms, and, we can guarantee you at the end of really 18 to 24 months that you can either buy this car out and lower your payments, or you could trade up and out into something nicer, newer. So it was a business model that I believe is completely consumer friendly. We include gap insurance, maintenance, warranties, the credit education component, loaner cars if a customer car is tied up. So we give every customer the relief that they need to give them the time to build their credit. And it's been incredibly successful. If you want me to continue, I started as a client to a software company, ended up partnering with the software company because he never saw a franchise dealer do what we're doing. And then about a year or so later, decided to buy the software company because I had a son that's mentally in that space and he knows what he's doing with that. Another, my one son, Michael, runs that. There was a lot of things that I wanted to improve with it. So now that's Dealer-Controlled Solutions, where we distribute my business model to other dealers.
And that business model seems pretty killer, Paul. And I just wonder, as an uneducated car buyer, what is that doing for the customer as far as retention and just, you're helping them get into a car that maybe they can't get it elsewhere. You seen that really help your business and the dealerships you're working with just by creating satisfied, happy, thrilled customers?
I don't think there's anything more that we could do for a customer. If they go on this path, you can financially change their life to allow you to go from a 500 credit score to a 680. The average customer's credit score goes up about 160, 170 points. So you're talking about transformational. You're talking about most of the people that enter the NJ Auto Lending program were not approved at other sources, right, and made their payments on time. Were able to trade out in order to qualify for single interest rates. It's really a great program, and which is why I think it's so successful, because it's a win-win.
You have dozens upon dozens of testimonials on the website.
There's so many testimonials. Like I said, if you would think that these are employees or family members, but the bottom line is you are a subprime lender. So for a dealer getting into this, it's not all bed of roses. You run into the problems of traditional subprime, but the benefits are financially and otherwise far outweigh the negatives. We have a 60% retention. That means 6 out of 10 of the customers are back at my doorstep buying another car. That's huge.
Massive.
Used cars, 60% retention on used cars. So there are people that default, but the beauty of our program is you can simply recondition the car and release it again and start the clock ticking, with another customer. So it's a very profitable entity. There's tax benefits. It's a very profitable entity. And, some dealers are considering, maybe I buy another dealership. Maybe this is as profitable as a dealership in time. This is as profitable as a dealership, as a lending company, besides supporting your dealership. So I can't imagine my business without it, to be honest with you. That's how ingrained into our business model it is. And for my managers, it's just like having another lender. They just know what we look for, and we have a very good process on vetting subprime customers out. And we lend to good people with low credit scores. That's a nice, warm and fuzzy statement. Everybody thinks they're a good person, but the fact is that you have to weed through bad people to get to good people with low credit scores. But there is a million of them out there. We all know somebody. If life hasn't happened to you, we all know somebody that life happened to.
Yeah, even you as a business owner and entrepreneur went through some crazy tough times in the past. And I would love it if you would share how you battled through those tough times as a business owner and entrepreneur when so much was on the line for you.
Again, when we had that time of separation, and Sean knows where I live, a very personal story. The fact is we're going through some very difficult times. Wasn't really sure if I was going to make it. We live across the street from the beach, and I have a beautiful home across the street from the beach. And I made the decision to put the house on the market, sell the house, and blah, 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 do whatever. And we came across, hung out at the beach all day, had fun, did what we normally do. We come across the jetty, and all of a sudden there's a for sale sign on the lawn. And my wife just started crying. And I said, I put the sign up, threw it in the trash. I said, I got to find another way. And the bottom line is, I don't know how I got through it other than work. And I mean that sincerely. I knew this is where I wanted to be. I knew this is where I wanted my grandkids to hang out. And I really just put your head down, get back to what I said before. Put your head down, one customer at a time, one greet at a time, work your ass off, work with as few people as you need. People that are willing to go shoulder to shoulder with you. And I've said it before, but work works. You don't need to be the smartest guy in the room. You just need to be the hardest worker.
It's really cool to hear those stories. It just makes, what you get on the other side of all that pain and adversity just makes it so much better. Obviously, my dad and myself were, battling every day, a lot of adversity, a lot of hurdles. So when things get really hard for you, Paul, what keeps you grounded? I mean, of course, hard work. You believe in the hard work, but do you have a routine or a principle that you rely on to push through?
Principle I rely on. I think I just gave you the principle I rely on. Like I said, I care about people that care. I was never good with the guys that I had to figure out what their angle was. I was accused of, one of the beasts my father and I had, he wanted a quick fix. I'm more comfortable with somebody that I know is going to be there in a year or two. You don't have to start from ground zero, as long as, like I said, that work ethic is there. So I think that's my principle. I like working with people that have looking for longevity. I'm willing to, work with them as long as we're improving. And like, for example, now that the market isn't as strong, what do? You look at, how do you rank? If I wanted to sell 100 cars and I sold 70, all right, that's a disappointment, but is my 70 better than the 50 the other guy sold? If it is, did a good job. Now it's up to me as a business owner to right size my business. If that business stays at that 70, then you got to make tough decisions and right size your business. I made money at my mall selling 125, 150 cars a month. I found a way to make money by lowering expenses, margins, etc. Now that we sold 300 cars a month and now we're back to 2.25, you're not making, you're like at the 300, obviously that's the wonderful thing. And now you're back down to 2.25. You can right size a business. And that's what you have to do. If I'm missing the market, then shame on me. But if I'm beating the market or matching the market, then I just have to right size my business. And then you have to, unfortunately, get into layout modes and all the other things that you got to do. But as a business owner, I feel I'm protecting the families that are behind.
Yeah. And there comes your constant innovation, finding your way out of those so-called holes. My dad, me, our company, we are, we're always looking for ways to balance, taking those big next steps. Can't make them too big, but, taking bold action while also protecting the core of your business. So can you talk a little bit about how maybe you balance those things?
I don't get rattled if we try something and it doesn't work. You look about, you're always looking to innovate. I mean, I've tried things that have failed. It cost me X amount of dollars. I don't get rattled as long as we had a plan, tried to execute the plan. If it didn't work out, like I said, I don't even think about it. Gone. Let's come up with a different plan. It's when you don't have a plan or you just throwing money to fix a problem, that's when I get upset about things. But
it's just not being afraid to fail and moving fast.
That gets to the quick decisions. I'm not afraid to try something. Now think about what's going on. This has been the transformation of AI in this business. And I'm not an AI expert. I have, again, my one son's into the technology, and it's scary how efficient the AI can make you. That's a whole nother frontier. Quite frankly, that's outside of my bandwidth. At my age, I don't need to learn another. I'm done with that. But as a dealer, you've got to embrace a technology like that. And if it's not going to be me embracing it, but I have people within the organization that are embracing it, because that is the new frontier of efficiency. Is AI, and we're going to be using it in my lending company that we're developing AI credit collection software. So, so maybe I'm misspoken when I say I'm not engaging in it. I am. I'm just not the guy doing it. But were you looking at this technology as how can we make us more efficient in service scheduling, BDC handling, collections? I mean, AI for collections is a game changer.
Sean, please.
I was just going to speak to the AI thing because literally, I remember Paul about a year ago was like, Sean, we got this guy, Jerry. He's phenomenal with our NJL customers. He's like, can you go and memorialize his process and his messaging and how he handles these customers? And he had a really awesome customer interview. And it's like a 12-minute phone conversation with a subprime customer. And you're figuring out, like, what do they qualify for? Are they a good person with low credit that fits into the DCL program or not? And so we scripted this thing out. Well, this was like 6-8 months ago, I think. I literally get from Paul Jr.'s son, Michael, who's kind of like the AI expert at their dealer group. I get a recording of a phone call. They made an AI that can do the phone interview start to finish. It's insane. Like, literally, it talks to this customer start to finish, just like following the script perfectly.
That's a part of our marketing packet. It sounds confusing. NJ Auto Lending is how I go to market as a retailer. So NJ Auto Lending is where we're developing the AI for lead handling. Because one thing about credit leads, there's a lot of burnout. A lot of people don't pick up the phone. So the computer is constantly engaging, texting, talking to customers. And again, this is my son's initiative, my son and this guy Jerry's thought process. But it went through, we delivered 2 cars Saturday that had no human element until they actually showed up at the dealership for an appointment. I mean, you had to do the car selection and everything else. But once we're almost 99% done with it, once we bring that to market, it's another game changer.
So the Sansone, let's just put Sansone Kia out there, and forgive me if I'm not completely up to par or speed with your business, but Sansone Kia, I know you own a few other franchises. You look at NJ Auto Lending as a separate business?
Well, yeah, first off, it's Sansone Jr. Auto Group. My father still is 89 years old, still has a very large business in the same geographic area. He actually has Sansone Kia. We have 2 Kia dealerships. So I have 2 Kia dealerships in Central Jersey. We just opened up our second location, which my son Paul PS3 runs. And in 4 months, they're almost top 10 in the New York region. I think we just finished our 4th month in business, and they're almost, I think they finished like 10th or 11th in the New York region. We were 10th last month. So I believe that'll be a top 5 Kia dealership in the Northeast region. Yeah, so that's the new addition. But I have 2 Nissan, which have been a challenge, 2 Kia, Mitsubishi, and then NJ Auto Lending is my lending company for my retail dealerships. All of my dealerships now have a new lender the last 5 years, NJ Auto Lending. And so we do separate marketing for that. Now, Dealer-Controlled Solutions, DCS, actually, we serve as a DMS solution for independent dealers. So we have buy here, pay here clients, lease here, pay here clients that our software is their DMS. My business model is more aligned to franchises that want to do what I'm doing. And we're meeting with some very large groups. Actually, we signed a very large group in New England that's just getting started, that they want to use the lease here, pay here model as their go-to-market strategy for their business. But Dealer-Controlled
DCS slide for you there, Paul.
It does get confusing, but NJ Auto Lending, my leasing company, as a separate entity, is as profitable as a dealership. That is fact, and thank God it's been active because it's really a benefit now. And I started it when business was great, and everyone said, well, why? I don't need to start another business, but I'm glad I did.
Seems like you're in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, no doubt. There's certainly more interest now. I just got, through the 20 group, I'm a Nissan dealer, and, if you're not selling 1-to-1 new to used, we have guys selling 6-7 used to new. They're basically used car dealerships. And the only way I know how to sell used cars is price, credit. You either have to be the cheapest price online or credit, provide a service. So again, I try to avoid being the cheapest price in town. I'd rather go the other way and work where the margin is.
I want to ask Paul, bring this back to an operational standpoint. What do you think? You've been a part of launching software, you've built programs that you've implemented effectively at your dealership, and also you're helping dealerships across the country implement their dealer controlled leasing solutions now. So what do you think today's dealers misunderstand the most about either innovation or adopting new technology that causes them to miss the mark?
Again, it's the fear factor. I mean, some dealers are not as engaged into the day-to-day activity of their business. So, I mean, think about it. I mean, some dealers aren't there every day at their business, and you're just looking at a financial statement, you're looking at sales numbers. And in my mind, that will create a little bit of a miss if you're not feeling what's going on in the market. And again, some guys are just, there's always early adopters, and I've always just been an early adopter. I don't know why others are reluctant to be so. It's because you get so many things thrown at you. You get so many things thrown at you that you're like, oh God, another shiny penny that's going to change, my world. I certainly do understand that, but that's why I like our business, because you're really creating another business within a business. I mean, you're really creating significant wealth and revenue with this. This is not improving your grosses 5%. I mean, this is, millions of dollars being generated net. So it's in my opinion, it's the next big idea for me is to scale this and make it easier for other dealers. And again, AI, we have AI, we're close to the AI credit approval software, that we're very, very, very close with that. So we're going to be able to, if you think about, I want to be a lender, and who wouldn't want to be a lender if you could do it well, right? Who wouldn't want to control the lending process if you could do it well? Here's the 4 pillars of it is, how do I fund this? What resources, what capital do I need to do it? Boom. We have solutions. How do I select the right people? How do I collect on them? And then how do you protect your asset? It's really 4 basic things. In 30, 60 days of the AI credit approval software that other dealers can replicate, the collection part of it, our software already handles 90% of the collection. We bring the AI collection on top of that, and it makes that even more robust. And we have an integrated collection partner. And then how do we protect the asset is just protecting it with gap insurance, maintenances, and all those other things, which are consumer and dealer benefits. So we try to solve the 4 pillars of what it takes to be a successful lender. But it does take work. I would not recommend it for a dealer that doesn't have that person that we can help them, coach them through the highs and lows of what it takes to be successful.
When you say work, you're talking about like someone who enjoys taking care of subprime customers, someone who can do the customer interviews.
You can't be having these credit bogues coming to my dealership. I mean, you got to look at these people as opportunities. These are people, I look at them that life happened to, that I can maybe be the person that puts the shining light in their day. I love our high five moment is not delivering a 480 credit score with my money. You don't need to be a great car guy to deliver a 500 credit score with my money. You need to be a great car guy to pick the right person that successfully completes the program. Now is a high 600, 700 that the negativity in their life is behind them. I had a mortgage approval letter on my desk with a signed note that said, "Thank you. You guys made this happen." Those are the things that besides the money, I just really, really enjoy.
Yeah, you guys focus so heavily on the relationship with the customer and the community. I sat there, I kid you not, for probably 4 hours with PS3. We making videos, recording videos for 3 years worth of automatic follow-up. Him just saying, "Hey, congrats on 12 months. Make sure you bring in your vehicle for maintenance," like stuff like that. It's funny what we're talking about AI and stuff, because I bought a car from a local St. Louis dealer that I coach who has dealer-controlled leasing, but also has vinsyt. So I literally, they hooked me up with a vinsyt, which is an AI that JP's company has. And now I found myself talking to it like it was a person. I had questions about my warranty and my maintenance schedule. And I was like, man, I'm about to drive to Kentucky. I need to check on that. So, but it's funny. And I'm like, all of a sudden I get a push notification, and it's like, hey, it's like, it's Ben from Don Brown Chevrolet. And I start chatting, how's your car doing? And I check in, and I'm like, yeah, I start chatting with this chat bot, and it knows my warranty, my maintenance schedule. Basically they're like, you could drive to Kentucky and back. You got plenty of time before your next oil change. And I'm like, is this real life? And that was JP's AI solution that they have. So I want to ask you, as it relates to software and innovation in general, I do believe leadership plays a huge role in innovation. And JP, I'd love to hear your take on this too, because, your dad's kind of like leading the charge for your company with you, as his wingman. Anyway, Paul, what leadership principles have guided you as you built solutions like DCL, DCS, easy referral, tier 4 marketing? Like, what leadership principles have guided you into doing that?
Well, again, giving props to my son, Michael, I've always been a creative guy and had the ideas, the vision, but in order to make it really work on an operational level, you need the detail, the technical background, the day-to-day in a technology company is not exciting many times. So you need a lot of detail behind it. And that was not me until, my son Michael stepped up to the plate. I would have never bought the technology company if he didn't feel he could help build it. I mean, I have the vision of what I wanted to do, but I don't have the bandwidth to actually build the engineer team. I mean, we have 8 developers. We have a whole sales, staff. I mean, so we have a lot going on, but I did not have the ability to make other ideas the money makers that they could have been, to be honest with you. Like I said, I think tier 4 marketing is as exciting an idea for salespeople these days. And the technology is actually there and the salesman's bandwidth to actually want to do it is there. So, but I promised my son, Michael, I wouldn't take on another project until this is done. But I want to hear about it. I want to get this thing over the curb and done. I said, all right, fair enough.
The more you've stepped out of the day-to-day dealership operations, does that just free you up to have more time to think of new ideas? And then
No, I think I get the ideas as I'm flowing with customers, as I'm seeing things happening, to be honest with you. I get them as I go. Things pop in my head.
As far as what I'm doing, what I think I'm doing right as a leader in my company, is that kind of the question?
yes.
There's a lot of times where I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, Sean. But what I will tell you, and especially hearing from Paul, who's very tenured, you got to be okay making mistakes. I am, middle-aged, somewhat of a younger guy, and I've made a lot of mistakes. And I think that's kind of helped me. At the end of the day, just kind of going with my heart has really been something that I've been able to look to is like, okay, yeah, I remember. And let's fast forward from a mistake that maybe I've made, but you don't know it's a mistake when you're making that decision, right? But maybe it didn't feel right. Something was, off about it. But hey, I liked what I heard, so I'm going to go that route. I've really, gotten better about kind of stepping back from it, listening to my heart, as crazy as that sounds, and going with it, surrounding myself with the right people. And Paul, I liked how you said you're okay, as long as I know they're going to be there in a year or two, if shit hits the fan, you can trust those guys. And I have guys on my team like that. Of course, my dad, we're together all the time, best buddies, but we have other guys on the team that have just been with us for 5 years now. And it was not always pretty, but they showed up every day. And a lot of times I don't even feel like a leader. We built this thing that, kind of runs itself. And a good leader is being able to kind of give the people that are working with you or for you the tools to lead themselves and feel like they're making a difference.
I am completely comfortable letting my kids and my nephew take the front seat. But it is a weird time, where my instinct is to get involved in a lot of things. I'm trying to not get involved in a lot of things and work through the primary people. Again, son, nephew, son, so people that are really the future of the business. But it is a little bit of a weird time for me not being full present, because I can't be the emotional leader. If you're going to be the emotional leader, you got to be the emotional leader Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, if need be. My son PS3, I mean, that's he's like there. You can't be the part-time leader. You can't be the rah-rah on Saturday and then, take off 4 other Saturdays to play golf, which I do. So I seriously,
or crack skulls on Saturday and then never make the Burper to top.
Even worst case scenario. Yeah. You piss on everybody's Cheerios on Saturday and then walk away. But I am comfortable talking about generational. I am comfortable taking a back seat, and I take as much joy in my kids' success I take probably more joy in my kids' success than my own. I don't feel like I don't have to create my brand. I don't have to. I'm fine with where I'm at, what I've done. I'm very, very comfortable letting my kids and nephew take the front seat and take all the glory from here. And actually, I think they have the bandwidth to even grow it in a few years once everything gets settled. But as a company, we're in that transition of me moving back, them. I said this to Sean the other day. If I was 3 years younger, they were 3 years older. I think I probably said 5 years younger, 5 years older. But on their part, it's just experience. On my part, it's just energy. If I had that 5 years more of energy that I wanted, or they had that so I'm in that little bit of a period where we're just working through things.
And you'd think if you're in your mid 40s like me, you'd have both the energy and the wisdom and the experience. But no, I feel like I don't have any of that. But anyways, I joke. But that's a great topic because there are so many. I was talking to one of my other clients. I have so many coaching clients who are going through that transition where, the owner's like trying to like take a back seat and pass the torch. They're still getting involved. And there's like the young generation who's trying to take charge isn't fully taking charge yet. They haven't figured out their boundaries and where they should go ahead and ask permission, or beg forgiveness rather than ask permission. They haven't figured those boundaries out yet. So what is the best way for a family going through that transition in their business to make that as smooth as possible?
Real quick, I trying to put everybody in a position of strength, meaning that they're, my son, my nephew, as I said, that they're in spots that they can succeed in. And I would have hired a operations manager below me above them if I didn't feel they were going to quickly grow into their shoes, so to speak. But since their background and expertise is sales, BDC, F&I, sales teams, motivation, so I've built a network, fixed operations director, obviously myself, controller, marketing. So I've sort of taken the other things that a true general manager has to deal with, all of that. If you're really a GM, you're dealing with everything: expense managing, cash flow, marketing, sales, you got it all. I'm just trying for this transition period, letting them focus on what I consider the most important thing, and that is sales processes, building sales teams. I'm not saying parts and service isn't important, F&I, used cars, those are the big things. So the harder ones that they don't have the expertise, fixed operations, I have somebody that oversees that for the company. That's their go-to person. Marketing, same thing. Controller, same thing for, expense conversations. So I'm like supporting them in other ways other than because I do believe in the year or 2 or 3 that they will be the seasoned general managers that really can run the entire operation.
No doubt. I could not agree more. They're growing very rapidly, and every time I get to talk to them, they amaze me. Some of the things they accomplish. So what's next for you in DCS?
With DCS specifically, there is the runway for me. On the retail side of it, I just talked about sort of leaving my path of my company to my kids and nephew. DCS, I would like DCS to be 2 things. One is the DMS solution for independent buy-here-pay-here. I believe we have the best product on the market for independent dealers. For franchise dealers, I want to make it easier for them and more comfortable for them to be the lender, to be in control of the lending process, and to create this wealth and this business and make it easier. I mean, I really put a lot of work into the minutia of making this happen, but that would be my legacy, that if hundreds of dealers, large and small, saw the value of being the lender. And in our business, say yes more often and you're going to sell more cars. I mean, very, very simply, if you have the ability to say yes, but when you do it without controls, you end up with very, very real problems. So it's just not being the lender. It's being the lender with the right rails, the right bumpers, and the right guidance and technology to make it work. But if you do it right, it's magic.
And Paul, thank you for letting us give you this interview today.
Got a closing question. With everything you've done, everything you've built, Paul, what are you most proud of that people maybe don't see from the outside?
I'm most proud of my family. I'm most proud of. I'm married 35 years, happily married 35 years. I've got 3 wonderful kids that are all respectable, nice people. I just say nice people, caring people. And that's the cool part about my age with kids in their 30s or whatever. You really get to see, and I have my first grandchild on the way, which is all very exciting. You really do get to see that. To me is what it's all about. I mean, yes, you want all the things that you have, and I do enjoy the things that I have, but I am most proud of the people. I really am most proud of my kids and the young adults that they are, and the marriage that I have with my wife. And, that's it on the surface. I mean, that most people don't see. Everyone thinks because you're where you're at, everyone doesn't realize the most successful businesses had to fail somewhere along the line. So you had to really gut check yourself to get to where you are. So while it's nice seeing the things that you are today, most successful business owners had to have a real gut check moment. And that's go into it. That's it. I have a friend of mine, G5 billion-dollar company, tells me the story that he had to ask his employees one time to hold their paychecks, so obviously many, many years ago. But the fact is that every success story has that come to Jesus moment where you got to have your gut check and you got to say, man, what do I have to do to do it?
Yeah. And we learn so much more from our failures than our successes. There's no doubt about that. And Paul, you should be proud of what you've overcome to build what you built. And you definitely left an amazing, you're leaving an amazing legacy, and you've cleared the path for your kids to grow and succeed. I mean, some of Paul's kids are literally singing the national anthem at the Super Bowl, for the record. You can't mention proudness of your kids and not mention that fact.
Well, I wasn't going to bring it up, but yes, my son-in-law will be singing the national anthem at the Super Bowl. It's pretty cool.
It's going to be awesome, man. This was a great conversation here on Automotive Innovators Unplugged. I want to thank, obviously, JP for being the awesome co-host that he is. I want to thank our special guest, Paul Sansone Jr. today, for sharing his insights and the innovations that are pushing our industry forward. And if you all found this episode valuable, then make sure you subscribe, share it with someone in the auto industry who needs to hear this, and keep the conversation going with us on social. I'm Sean Kelley, the Car Biz Coach, reminding you that great leaders develop people, great dealers develop culture, and great innovators like Paul Jr. here change the game. We'll see you next week with another industry leader who's helping shape the future of the car business. Keep winning, my friends.